The first thing that comes to my mind when I think about ramen is the cheap little orange packet that you buy at the store. But little do you know that this is actually a huge staple dish in Japan. First, let's take a little look into what this Japanese cuisine is all about. A basic bowl of Japanese ramen will contain Japanese ramen instant noodles, bok choy, which is a type of Japanese cabbage, half of a molten egg, thinly sliced scallions, fish cake, and your choice of protein. This is tonkatsu ramen, which contains thinly sliced pieces of pork, and the broth is actually pork-based as well from the boiling of pig bones.
Delicious.
Overall, this dish wasn't my most favorite thing I ever had, but it was very salty, which I knew going into it. Talking to my server when she was describing the different kinds of broths, she said that they all have a very salty consistency. It did have a very strong pork sort of aftertaste, but I also knew that because when she was describing the broth, she was telling me how it is made from the boiling of pig bones for about up to 8 hours. It did have a lot of different flavors and textures in it, from the egg as well as a fishy taste from the fish cakes that were included, but it was good. I'm not knocking it completely, but it just was not my favorite. Since I can't cook to save my life, we actually ended up going out and getting ramen. We went to a place called Ramen Time, which is actually locally owned in Scottsdale, Arizona. They make everything from scratch there. When looking over the menu, I was really confused because I had never really had authentic Japanese ramen before. My server did describe to me, though, that in Japan there are 3 main broths. There's going to be shio, which is actually a very salty based broth. It's probably going to be the most popular over there. But they also have shoyu, which is basically a soy sauce based broth. And then tonkatsu, which is going to be the pig bone broth that I actually ended up trying. For somebody that had never had it before or had no idea how to order anything, it actually all ended up being really well, and I actually learned a lot through the whole experience as well. Ramen hasn't always been known as a Japanese dish. It actually started out in China and didn't make its way over to Japan until around the 19th century. Ramen then became deeply engraved in urban everyday life all throughout Japan. Fortunately, ramen almost disappeared during World War II. Rationing in Japan during World War II did not allow ramen to be consumed or sold, as it was seen as a luxury for eating out. Food shortages and famines made the government place heavy regulations on food supplies, and profits on selling food was prohibited. This time period was one of the worst periods of hunger in Japan's history. Unavoidably, black market food stands sprang up even after the war ended. Although it was still illegal, this was due to the United States continuing food rationing during the time of occupation in Japan. Unemployed workers who tried to sell ramen could potentially, and did, actually end up going to jail. During this time of famine and hunger, ramen came to represent an opposite view of what it represents today. It was seen as a symbol of a time of need and the basic necessities of life. One could not afford to eat luxurious foods such as ramen. Following World War II, Japan underwent a prosperous economic boom. This period of rapid economic growth and development contributed to the revitalization of ramen. The numerous construction projects required huge numbers of construction workers after the war. Construction workers consumed large quantities of bowls of ramen. Ramen contained many healthy ingredients that would provide sufficient energy to keep the workers properly fed and energized. Many restaurants that specialized only in ramen became increasingly popular in Japan. Ramen once again became a staple dish in a rapid growing country that Japan has become. Today, ramen has become a symbol and historical figure of Japanese culture and history. ramen has extended its reach globally around the world. You can find a lot of authentic ramen noodle shops around the US in many cities today, as well as instant noodles in almost every single grocery store that you go to that us college students love to eat. Though ramen has now become a global trend, its deep roots will always be attached to Japan's history. Ramen has come to be what it is today thanks to historical events that have occurred in Japan and the people inspired by those events.